ojos celestes reflejaban la gloria del día y cantaba como una calandria la pulpera de Santa Lucía. Era flor de la vieja parroquia, quien fue el gaucho que no la quería. Los soldados de 4 cuarteles suspiraban en la pulpería. Le cantó al payador mazorquero con un dulce gemir de mi buena, en el patio que olía a jazmín y en la reja que olía de amena. Con el alma te quiero, pulpera, que algún día tendrás que ser mía. Mientras lloran por ti las guitarras de Santa Lucía. Le cantó el payador mazorquero con un dulce gemir de vihuela, en el patio que olía a jazmín y en la reja que olía de amena. Con el alma te quiero, pulpera, y algún día tendrás que ser mía. Mientras lloran por ti las guitarras de Santa Lucía.
Good evening, everyone. We are talking about La Pulpera de Santa Lucía, this beautiful valse. And it's something that's a little bit different today. What is it? This song was recorded, this version that we chose is recorded by Alberto Castillo with his own orchestra, led by Enrique Alessio. Instead of, like we have always listened to in this whole series, this whole year, Cantor de Orchestra, where there was an important orchestra and they hired a special singer that belonged to the orchestra and sang as a part of the orchestra. Majority of the music that we dance to in the milongas are from that period of that formation of Cantor de la Orquesta, where there's an orchestra and then a singer belonging to them. Some songs are instrumental, some songs are sung, but in most cases, the singer is part of the orchestra. Now, this formation is a little bit different. How different? We'll get into that. The singer Alberto Castillo was one of the most important singer in the age of the Cantor de Orquesta. He sang with Ricardo Tanturi. Remember that both of them had a medical background. They were going to be doctors. Actually, they were doctors, but then they had to give it up because, they had to focus on more important businesses, which is being a tango musician, bringing joy to the people. Castillo was from Floresta, in this very working class, regular neighborhood, no? And he was really popular because he really brought up the emotions of the regular people. People felt represented and people went nuts. There was a picture of him with the huge crowd, no? And after having this successful career with Tanturi, he went solo. He was one of the first cantor de orquesta to go solo, and many other singers followed suit. You can see in this advertisement, Alberto Castillo, the sensation of tango, he's going to present his great new orchestra. And he says like, tonight and the Sintonice, no, at 9:30 p.m. That's when he's going to perform. And he says, in a small letter, look how big the Castillo is, and in a small letter, Enrique Alessio is the director of the orchestra. So now the role has reversed. In most cases, they would say a big name in the name of the orchestra, and the singer is mentioned, but it's much smaller than the name of the orchestra. Now the role has reversed in his case. No, Enrique Alessio, if you have paid attention, he's actually had an interesting career because he was a lead bandoneonist of Puliese's orchestra first, and then he was hired by Castillo to lead his backup orchestra, and then he went to work for D'Arienzo. It's very interesting, no? A very different style orchestra to work for. But anyhow, he had this money-making gig, Alberto Castillo's backup orchestra, and then Alberto Marino also had him backing up and made some recordings. I'm not sure if we know, because majority of the song, again, that we dance to in the milongas are from the Cantor de Orquesta, so the solo careers, we don't know how important it is. Castillo was really known for valses, and some of his songs, like the one that we listened to today, La Pulpera de Santa Lucía, Violetas, no, there are some that we dance to, but majority of songs, again, we don't dance to, but they had an important impact. The time after the 1940s, no, Castillo went solo in 43. This chart shows the number of recordings by the singer with a backup orchestra, that the singers that went solo. This bar chart shows how many recordings those solo singers made. And the red line shows the trend of the whole tango industry, the whole tango recordings, no? So there was a little bit downtown in the 1950s, but the solo singers the whole genre grew a lot, especially in the 50s. No, you can see that. In the 40s, there was this whole genre of tango for dancing, no, coming up and solidifying, and then the singers made their name, and then so they went solo so that they can sing as much as they want, the way they wanted, get all the money in the pocket, etc., etc. Who were they? For example, like I said, Castillo, and then Fiorentino also went solo. And the first backup orchestra was led by Piazzolla. They both worked for Troilo, and they went independent. Alberto Marino also left Troilo and went solo later. Angel Vargas from D'Agostino. Alberto Moran from Pugliese. Maure also had his solo career later. Just to understand, the importance of these singers after they left those orchestra. Here's a ranking of how many recordings each solo singer made with his own backup orchestra after they went solo. This number one singer made 185 records. Again, it's not a digital time. Getting a recording gig and publishing already is like a sign of success, because not everybody can publish, no? So the number one, I'm not sure if you can guess, is Alberto Castillo. Can you guess who the number two is? This singer, maybe in the United States and Europe, outside of Argentina, maybe we don't listen to him so much, let alone dance to him. But this is a very important singer, later singer, and we're going to cover him in a few weeks. Roberto Goyeneche. And followed by Alberto Marino. Can you guess the next one? Ta-da! Alberto Moran. Remember that he was so popular that the musicians got annoyed. All the guys at the dance floor also got annoyed because all the girls would go to the stage and just admire him, and they would not dance with anyone. No? Anyhow, he had a really great, successful career as a solo singer too. And believe it or not, the last one is Angel Vargas. He also recorded a lot of solos, although majority of this music we don't dance to. And if you listen to it, it will be very clear because the music is a little bit too much singer in front. The pacing changes, very, very dramatic. It's quite different feel than the Cantor de Orchestra period, because again, those musics were made specifically to make people dance. And when the singer went solo, their purpose is not necessarily to make people dance. It was a different audience, different purposes, and different style of music. Now, this song, La Pulpera de Santa Lucía, was a revival by the Castillo. Originally, it was recorded by Ignacio Corsini, who I would like you to remember the name because it's a very important singer, along with Carlos Gardel and Agustin Magaldi. He had a nickname, Caballero Cantor, gentleman singer. And it was this song was recorded in 1929 when valse was in fashion. This kind of valse was in fashion, and there were many valses coming up. And as we listened to before the session started, it was with a guitar accompaniment. He would sing, very clear, no? You can hear all of his the singing very well, very clearly, and with four guitar accompanying himself, Rosendo Pessoa, Eduardo Pages, and then Enrique Maciel. Enrique Maciel is this gentleman, Afro-Argentinian musician, who also composed this song. remember here, no, this song was recorded in 1929, and this red bar is the valse. Valse was super popular back then. Many songs that we danced to, the valses that we danced to, came around, was composed around this time and recorded first time in this time, and it got revived, got re-recorded, picked up by different orchestras in the 40s. Like this song, like the one we listened to few months back, Palomita Blanca. Now, this song is a collaboration between the said Enrique Maciel, the guitarist that accompanied Ignacio Corsini, and Hector Blomberg. They had a great career duo as a creative team. Hector Blomberg was a poet. He also wrote scripts for theaters, novels. He was a journalist, like in many other poets. And they, it was a very interesting duo, they say, because Blomberg ancestor was Norwegian, and he had blue eyes, blonde, and then Maciel was Afro-Argentinian. But they were a great team. They looked so contrasting, but they shared this motive for the creativity. This poetry, de la Pulpera de Santa Lucía, first he wrote, Hector Blomberg wrote, and he was introduced to Maciel and asked him to put music onto it. He did. They liked it. They suggested to a theater that was playing at the time to debut this song, and they looked at it and it's like, this is like, no, whatever, like, we don't care, no, we're not going to do it. And so they were really upset because, you know, they thought this was a really nice song. And then there comes Ignacio Corsini, and he said, oh, this is nice, I will record it. So he recorded, and then overnight it became a huge hit, so much. They will record, he first performed it on radio, and after the first airing of the radio program, the phone was ringing, everybody wanted the recording, everyone wanted the score, and so they had to record right away, and it sold so much. Everybody was singing this song. It was huge. And this was the first collaboration between Blomberg and Enrique Maciel, and after that, they wrote so many songs, one after another, boom, 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 boom. No? And many of them, majority of their songs, they were based in a similar theme, similar time, which I will get into later. This song, like as you've read already, is a story, no? And people are so fascinated, people are obsessed with what happened with this Pulpera, no? And so much that Hector Blomberg wrote a novel, wrote a story. You can see this is a picture of the book that he wrote. He says novelas. No? So this is not a poetry book, but it's actually a story book that he wrote based on this poetry. And people are so obsessed that there was another song by another author and composer that wrote this song from the other character's point of view, called El Payador de San Telmo, and Ignacio Corsini actually recorded it. That also became a big hit, but then the original author, Hector Blomberg, got really upset, like, no, you can't do this. Like, this is my story, somebody else telling my story, not cool. But they reconciliated, and then Ignacio Corsini continued to record Blomberg and Maciel's compositions. They were actually more like a trio in a way, bringing new creation to public's ear. Now, La Pulpera de Santa Lucía, like when you hear it, like what is it about? You don't know. We translate it as a barmaid of Santa Lucía, but it's a lot to explain. Now, pulpera comes from pulperia. Pulpera is a woman who worked in the pulperia. Now, what is pulperia? Pulperia, in those times, in this context, that was an establishment in the 19th century that combined the services of the general stores. You can see in these pictures where they sold stuff. No, it's like a store, but also people would hang out there, especially the ones who have no money, who have nowhere to go. They would sing songs. No, they would play cards. They would have drinks there. So it became sort of like a bar, hangout place, like a social place, no? And in the lyrics, we translated it as canteen because canteen also means a store where they would sell supplies, for example, in a military context, no? And also a very casual, like a cafeteria where you can eat and drink. Yeah? And you can imagine that there will be street like this, and then people will go in and hang out, etc. Where does the name pulperia comes from? It's an old word, and there are many theories. One theory is that pulperia comes from pulpo, which means octopus, which has a lot of legs, because the store manager would have to work hard getting things and attending many customers at the same time, like as if they have multiple arms. There are many other different theories. You can look it up on Wikipedia. It's actually quite interesting. But anyhow, that's the setup that we are talking about. Yeah, pulperia. What about the Santa Lucia part? The barmaid of Santa Lucia. Santa Lucia is not the name of the girl. Okay, it's the place. This map is from 1866. This story is actually happening a little bit before that, but more or less you can see the Buenos Aires city was only in the center, and like Palermo, where today we would go out dancing, is just field, okay? It hasn't been developed yet. Now the Santa Lucia is located between the center. This map is tilted. No, north is this way. This is south. This is the Riachuelo River, as we know it, and La Boca, the port, is right here. So Santa Lucia is located between the center and the Riachuelo River, outside of the city, where a lot more humble people lived, and then also some military camps were. And this name Santa Lucia comes from the parroquia de Santa Lucia Virgen y Mártir. It's the name of the church, Catholic church that was built here. It's still there. And this neighborhood is today's Barracas. If you care and if you ever go to Buenos Aires, you can actually go there and see, like, okay, this is where it was. It's very good. You can see that it says Santa Lucia. So this is happening in this pulperia, which is like a store / bar, very casual setting that is located in Santa Lucia, which is today's Barracas neighborhood. That's the setup. Yeah. The song starts like this. Era rubia sus ojos celeste, who she was blonde, and her light blue eyes reflected the glory of the day, and she sang like a lark, the barmaid of Santa Lucia. This poem starts praising this woman, the barmaid. Reflejaban la gloria del día y cantaba como una calandria la pulpera de Santa Lucía. Era flor de vieja parroquia. She was a flower of the old parish. What parish? The Santa Lucia parish, no? That whole neighborhood was called, was the parroquia, the parish of Santa Lucia Church. And she was the beauty. Remember, also in those times, the gender balance was not quite right. There were more men than women. ¿Quién fue el gaucho que no la quería? Who was the cowboy? Here we translated the gaucho as cowboy, but you know who the gauchos were, no? They were in the Pampas outside of Buenos Aires, where they were hunting the cows, riding the horses, and sort of like the base of the Argentine culture, that didn't love her. Who was that cowboy that didn't love her? Los soldados de 4 cuarteles suspiraban en la pulpería. The soldiers from 4 stations sighed in the canteen. In this pulpería, there were soldiers hanging out and talking about this woman. So this store normally would have the owner, a man, dealing with the clients. But in this particular store, there was this girl, the barmaid, working there. And that was everybody's attention. And maybe that's why they would go there, no? To get a glimpse of her, to hear her sing. Now, I would like to talk about what is the historical context of this song. But before that, does this look familiar to you? I think I asked before how many of you have gone to Buenos Aires, and about half of you have been there. If you've been there, you've seen this. It's the subway map, subte map, no? And if you have never been there, you would have to deal with it. Once you go there, you get used to it. All these names of stations, so long and so complicated, always gives us headache. What are they? Many of them are named of the generals and politicians in the history of Argentina. For example, General San Martin, who contributed in independence of Argentina, like Manuel Belgrano, he also chose or selected this flag, Argentine flag, for example. Pueyrredón, General Urquiza, Manuel Dorrego, Juan de la Valle, the station name is La Valle, Juan Manuel Rosas. This name you see all the time because it's the end of the line, Juan Manuel de Rosas, and you always go down and say, oh, which way of train do I have to take? It's like, is it the Rosas or Alem? Rosas or Alem? No? Red line is one of the lines that you have to take all the time when you're in Argentina and when you're there for dancing. Anyhow, these characters are important personnel in the history of Argentina. Now, who are they? Let's get into it. The independence of Argentina happened when? Do you know? It's actually quite a little bit complicated. It's not like one day, boom, like this is when they became independent. They celebrated the 100th anniversary of independence in 1910. So supposedly it happened in 1810. But the events leading up to it is actually it makes more sense if we look into the events that leading up to it. First, the United States of America became independent from Britain, no, in 1776, and then there was a French Revolution happened right after, and then what happened after the French Revolution was a Napoleonic War in 1803, and so Spain, who was the Argentina was colony of, was getting quite busy and preoccupied and not having to do a lot with the faraway colony that wasn't threatening the country when the country was under the threat, no? So there was a British invasion of Buenos Aires and Montevideo in 1806, right while in the middle of the Napoleonic War. And the Argentina didn't get a lot of help from Spain. But, you had to deal with somewhat. So many of the criollos, the Spaniards that moved to Argentina, became Argentinian, or some of them were born in Argentina already and had the identity of Argentinians, Creole Argentine. They formed their own army or militia, and fought back against the British Army and defeated them. So that sort of like led them, like, you know what, we can take care of ourselves, and they didn't care about us. Like, so why do we keep paying tax to them? Huh? That started. And right after that, King of Spain was displaced by Napoleon because Napoleon won the war against Spain. They were under, so, hey, wait a minute, we don't have anybody to respond to. So then these guys did this revolution pretty easily, May 25th revolution, and established Congress. And a few years later, on July 9th, that's why this is the Independence Day in Argentina, they declared independence in Tucumán. That's the background of what's going on. Now, after they declared, which was pretty easy, you know, because Spain couldn't deal with it. It's also so far away, you know, they were defeated, etc. But then what followed through was, of course, chaos. Civil War of Argentina that lasted for quite some time. And there was a war between the federal side and Unitarian side. No? Unitarian side was pushing for centralized government, while federal side was pushing for provincial autonomy. People who are in Buenos Aires were more for the Unitarian originally, and then the people who are outside was more for the federal side. And in the beginning, they were both equally pretty strong, and they had complete opposite interest. And so the war sparked. And who was reading Federal was the Juan Manuel de Rosas, and then the other side was Juan de la Valle. Of course, there are different generals coming up and going, but the time that we are talking about, the background of this song is during the rivalry between these two forces and two men. So they were going back and forth, but anyhow, the Federal was in power in Buenos Aires, led by Dorrego, and then Lavalle could. So they took power, and so then Rosas defeats Lavalle and became governor of Buenos Aires province. That's the beginning of the Época de Rosas, the age of Rosas. Doesn't mean it's rose color. Rosa come from his name. Yeah. Now, while he was the governor of Buenos Aires province, he decided to go south in the Desert War to take over the indigenous people's land, which was still not part of Argentina at that time. Actually, Argentina, as it is today, was not what it looked like in this time, in the 1820s and 30s. And so while Rosas was gone, Lavalle revolted in 1940. But then he came back and Lavalle got defeated and then killed during the war. And many years later, 10 years later, there was this war against, from Argentina or the Buenos Aires province against Brazil and Paraguay and all these countries. Rosas went to the war, but he got betrayed by General Urquiza, actually, who was on the federal side and got defeated. And that was the end of Época de Rosas. And he had to exile in UK. And he actually spent the rest of his life as a farmer. And in 1953, Constitution of Argentina was set. And then finally, in 1962, first president of unified country, Argentina, was elected. Bartolomé Mitre became the first president. So by 53, by late 50s, 60s, the Civil War ended and the stability came back to Argentina. But until then, there was these decades of instability. and civil war going on. That is the background of this song. You can look right here in the how Argentina's territory changed. No, the story, like what we are looking at right here, is how Argentina looked like in this song. No? And then, because it was separated, no, into different factions, and then he went to the desert war and annexed this part that belonged to the indigenous people, and then it became Argentina as it is now. And this part in the north, no, Paraguay and Bolivia got separated into a different territory because back then it was part of Argentina. Now, this character, Juan Manuel de Rosas, is very important as a tango dancer because you see mentioning of him many times. Some of you who has been to Argentina might have seen 20 peso bill, which worth very little today because of inflation. He's right here. He had a nickname, Restorer of the Laws, because out of the chaos, he became the governor of Buenos Aires province and brought order. Sometimes, maybe too much order. While he was gone, his wife actually set up this military or secret police, however you want to call it, that served him, that was loyal only to him. And they were called La Mazorca. La Mazorca has many meanings, and one theory is that it means corn cob that they used to use for torture against body parts. Some say it means mazorca. Orca means gallows. What is gallows? You can see right here. Anyhow, it's a terrible name, but they were called La Mazorca. And they kept peace, no? They kept order and helped him be the dictator, virtually the dictator of Argentina from 1829 to 1852. And so there are different evaluation of him in the history of Argentina, and it's very controversial in any historical facts. But anyhow, he's somebody very important, and you just hear his name every now and then. If you hear something, Federal, or Rosas, La Mazorca, Mazorquero, we are talking about this man of this period, of this particular situation, when there was a civil war between the Federal side and Unitario side. Okay? And they, because of their flag, no, the color was the red, so these soldiers wore these costumes, no, in the red hat and the red jackets, and as you can see in these pictures. And because Juan Manuel de Rosas he grew up in the range outside of Buenos Aires, no, in the Pampas, and he mingled with gauchos and all these people who later served him in La Mazorca. Many of these people were from the Pampas and the ex-gauchos, no? And so, which is like the origin also of the tangos and milongas and payadores. So there are a lot of intermix in the historical context. So when we look at this, no, into the lyrics, it says, Le cantó el payador mazorquero. The payador trooper sang to her. So what is this? This guy, payador, again, remember, is the guy who would sing in with improvised poetry, singing with the guitar accompaniment, like this guy. So this guy was a payador, and he was also mazorquero. He was part of the La Mazorca. What is the Mazorca? Is the secret police that belonged to Rosas, and he wore this red uniform, no? So that's the character that we're talking about now. Now this guy, the payador trooper, the payador mazorquero, sang to her, to who? The barmaid, no? Con un dulce gemir de vihuelas. Vihuelas is an old word or a type of guitar, with a sweet groan of guitars. En el patio que olía jazmines, in the patio smelling like jasmine. And la reja is like this, no? This iron work by the window. By the ironwork fence that smelled like diamelas. Diamelas is a type of flower that is a family of jasmine. So it also smelled really nice. They're both white, like you can see in these pictures, and it smells really nice. You know? So now, just to explain about this one sentence, one phrase, no, el payador mazorquero. Now you know what we are talking about. This word keep coming up in many different songs, especially these Milonga Candombe, no, La Mulateada, Rosa Morena, and also another vals, Estampa Federal. There are mention of these words. I'm just gonna play these parts, no? So follow along and see if you can identify those words, mazorqueros, y federales, rosas, etc.
Están de fiesta en la casa larga los mazorqueros de Montserrat, y entre las luces de las antorchas bailan los negros de la piedad. Se casa Pancho, rey del candombe, con la mulata más federal. En los cuarteles de la Recoba soña el mulato sentimental.
Now next song.
Del carnaval de Rosa no se olvidaba al cantar esta copla roja de amores. Rosa morena de la estrella federal, yo sé que tu alma está llena de una pasión que es mortal.
Next song.
Y entre las sombras, doña Encarnación, moños federales en tu peinetón, bailan en la fiesta de los mazorqueros, ruedan las gabotas, giran los lanceros.
I'm not going to go into like the meaning of this, but just so you know that there are actually many songs that mention this, you know? And I hope you can come back to it and it's like, oh wait, I heard the word La Mazorca, Rosas, Federal. Ah, they're talking about these kind of contexts. No? Now let's go back to the story. The payador mazorquero is singing. What is he saying? Con el alma te quiero, Pulpera, y algún día tendrás que ser mía. Mientras por ti, lloran por ti las guitarras de Santa Lucía. He's confessing his love to the barmaid. I love you with my soul, barmaid, and someday you will have to be mine, while the guitars cry for you, the guitars of Santa Lucía. It seems like an innocent, harmless love story, yeah? Now, there are unsung part by the Castillo, although Ignacio Corsini sang it. La lleva un payador de la valle. Cuando el año 40 moría, ya no alumbran sus ojos celestes la parroquia de Santa Lucía. So what happened? A payador supporting la valle. So now the Unitarian side, no, the blue and white side, comes a payador from that side. Took her away by the end of 1840. What happened in 1840? Lavalle revolted against Rosas, but then he got defeated, so they had to retrieve to the north, outside of Buenos Aires. So when the Lavalle's army retrieved, I assume that this payador who took this Pulpera away, they also all went up north. So she She's no longer in Santa Lucia. Her light blue eyes don't like the parish of Saint Lucia anymore. So everybody's left, empty and sad. No volvieron los trompas de rosas a cantarle vidaras y cielos. En la reja de la pulpería, los jazmines lloraban de celos. Rosa's troops didn't sing to her again, vidaras y cielos. Vidaras and cielos are type of music, a format of music, just like vals, milonga, tango, ranchera, vidaras, cielos. No? They are old style genre of music, Argentine music that the payador would sing. No? But the Rosa's troops, the mazorqueros, in red, dressed in red, they didn't come back to sing because she was gone. In the canteen's ironwork fence, jasmines cried out of jealousy because she's gone. Y volvió el payador mazorquero a cantar en el patio vacío la doliente y postrer serenata que llevábase el viento del río. What is this? The payador trooper, remember the payador mazorquero that was originally singing to the Pulpera, who loved her, but she didn't love him back. No? He came back to sing in the empty patio, the grieving and last serenade that the river's wind took away. So he came back to sing, to say goodbye. Why the river's wind? Because Barracas de Santa Lucia neighborhood is right very close to the Riachuelo River. So the river's wind came and carried his sad serenade away. ¿Dónde estás con tus ojos celeste? Oh pulpera, que no fuiste mía. ¿Cómo lloran por ti las guitarras de Santa Lucia? Where are you with your light blue eyes, oh barmaid who wasn't mine? How much the guitars cry for you, the guitars of Santa Lucia. So the guys left alone without her because the soldier and also the payador from the Lavalle side took her away. That is the story, the full story of this song. And now, understanding this, let's listen to the song again and see how you feel.
Era rubia y sus ojos celestes reflejaban la gloria del día y cantaba como una calandria la pulpera de Santa Lucía. Era flor de la vieja parroquia, quien fue el gaucho que no la quería. Los soldados de 4 cuarteles suspiraban en la pulpería. Le cantó al payador mazorquero con un dulce gemir de mi buena en el patio que olía a jazmín y en la la reja que olía de amena. Con el alma te quiero, pulpera, que algún día tendrás que ser mía. Mientras lloran por ti las guitarras de Santa Lucía. Le cantó el payador mazorquero con un dulce gemir de vihuela en el patio que olía a jazmín y en la reja que olía de amena. Con el alma te quiero, pulpera, y algún día tendrás que ser mía. Mientras lloran por ti las guitarras de Santa Lucía.